Hi guys, my name is Kirsten Jackson and I'm a UK registered dietitian. So I will introduce myself fully in a minute, but I just want to introduce a topic and I want to get you to the place that I need you to be in before we dive into this topic. So the topic being how to get long-term relief from your IBS without a restrictive diet. Now, I'm covering this today just because I see so many claims out there, and I understand, as you know, I have IBS myself as well as being a dietitian, that sometimes, you know, or always you are in this place of you just want symptom relief, and unfortunately you might try a lot of restrictive diets and supplements. Some of these things cost a lot of money, they have a lot of time, you know, involvement in, and actually they're not going to give you the long-term relief that you need. So using science, I'm going to show you how I help clients, and there's a few different pointers here that I really want you to take note of. So let's get into it. So tag me on Instagram. So I am available on Instagram, and this goes for, you know, you'll find sometimes I ramble on, and if you're thinking, Kirsten, I have no idea what you're talking about, or even better, you think I'd love some more information about that topic, because it is a broad topic we're covering today in quite a short period of time, please do reach out to me and just ask questions, or, you know, use that page for more information in general. It is open to you. Also, just because I want you guys to really kind of get the benefit of this talk today, I want you to stay to the end. And if you do, I'm going to show you how you can download my free IBS flare-up guide. This is just a real simple guide. And basically, when you have a flare-up, I want to take you from having a flare-up that lasts several days to just a few hours. And, you know, when you're in that flare-up, I know what it's like. You kind of panic, you don't know what to do, and this just gives you a really clear step-by-step. This is what you do, and it takes the thought process and panic out of it. So that is available to you at the end of this presentation if you stay to the end. So are you in the right place? Let's find out. So you're in the right place if you have found that nothing gives you long-term relief. You have maybe tried the low FODMAP diet and found that after a while your symptoms just come back, or perhaps it didn't even work. And you're in the right place if, you know, perhaps actually your IBS is in a good place. You know, you've got the symptom relief that you need, but actually you're just worried for the future because you understand that, you know, there is no cure technically for IBS at this stage. And you're just thinking, well, what about in the future? What's going to happen there? And what we want to do is give you long-term relief and also that confidence to manage your symptoms. So, but I would say this is not the right place for you if you are expecting me from the title today is to say, this is the one secret you've been missing. Here's this amazing pill that you can buy and it's going to resolve all your symptoms. Sadly, IBS doesn't work like that, and you'll understand a little bit more after I finish today. And if it did, I'm sure I'd be a millionaire by now by selling this one pill. But sadly, it's a little bit more complicated than that. Not too complicated, otherwise nobody would be able to manage their IBS. But we need to kind of fully understand the different cogs to it, and then we can move forward. Cool. So if I haven't put you off already, you are in the right place. So we will get into it. So let me introduce myself properly. So my name is Kirsten Jackson, and this is a list of my credentials or experience. And this is not a list for me to kind of say, oh, look at me, or get attention. You know, there's people out there with far more qualifications in their areas, I'm sure. What this list is for is basically, I know that at this stage in your IBS, you've probably seen lots of people claiming to be experts, or you know, selling you things as such. Not that I'm going to be selling you anything today, but you know, they claim to be experts, especially on social media these days. And you may have wasted time, wasted money, or even wasted some of your health trying to follow these. And actually they're not experts and you can't trust them. And I am a registered dietitian. I am UK registered, and I am part of that registration is I'm part of a health body, so I can only give you information, and by law that is, you know, it's backed up by science. It's not a fad. It's not just so I can make some money or quickly, this kind of thing. So yeah, it's something you can trust. And also I have a lot of experience. So I guess I'm a dietitian, but I have specialised in gastro for over 10 years, basically all my career. In the last 5 to 7 years of that, I'd say I've only worked with IBS clients. So, you know, while I know all about other gastro elements, IBS is really my, you know, bread and butter. And then finally, I also have IBS. Now, I know that's not a qualification, but it sure does change how I advise people in terms of I've got that empathy, and I know what it's like to live with the condition. Okay, so itchy nose there. Had to little scratch there. So this is some pictures of me, and you might be thinking, what on earth is she talking about now? And I just want to kind of motivate you guys, I guess, because this is what, to me, long-term IBS symptom relief means, okay? So often when people say, oh, I want to be less bloated, or I want my bowels to open up every day, actually that's not quite the case. I mean, you might be thinking, well, you're crazy because that's what I want, Kirsten. I want relief of my symptoms. But actually, it's what that relief brings you, okay? And these 3 images for me, which is what I use in a lot of my presentations, is something I hope that you will be relating to. So in the top left corner, it's me on a hike, and basically a hike is probably, if you've not got your long-term IBS control, is like your worst nightmare in terms of, there's no toilets, you don't know when you're going to have your food, all the things that could impact your IBS, right? And actually, for me in that time, I had managed my IBS, and that's what long-term relief and confidence looks like. And my picture on my right, that's me and my lovely husband on a wedding day. Now, I'm not saying that having no IBS or having control of your IBS is going to help you get married. Can't promise that. I mean, never know, but can't promise it. But definitely when you have uncontrolled IBS, it does impact your relationships, whether that's romantic, friendship, or within your own family, because you do feel, even though you might have fantastic family members or friends that say, oh, I can understand, and they listen, unless they've got IBS, a lot of the time you can feel quite alone. And actually, when you get in control of your IBS and you can understand it, then often that allows you to have better relationships with other people. And I do honestly feel that as a result of this has allowed me to kind of break down my own barriers. And then the last picture there is me on my 30th birthday, which seems quite a long time ago now, in Africa. And again, when you have IBS and it's uncontrolled, there's no way you could go on safari, for drives of, 10 hours at a time, you can imagine. So again, this is what IBS control and relief meant for me. It meant, getting this kind of lifelong dream as such. Okay. So what we'll go through is some elements today. So nutrition, mental health, movement and sleep. And this is my Take Control IBS methodology. I can't even say the word. But essentially, this is why some of the things that you've maybe tried before don't work long term. Because when we look at IBS, you need to be targeting all these elements. And this is what I'm about to explain to you a little bit more. And this is where my IBS control system or methodology is that word again, it works over the 4 different pillars, and that's what we need to be concentrating on when we have IBS. So you will learn today, number one, how the low FODMAP diet can damage your gut health. And you might be thinking, what? But we'll come into that, okay? Number 2, how probiotics do not change your gut microbiota. Definitely true. And you're thinking, this girl's crazy. And then last one, the 2 things that are crucial for improving gut health sensitivity. So number 1, the low FODMAP diet. Let's get into that. Okay. So multiple studies, the study outcomes vary, but show around 50 to 80% of people improve. So you'd be thinking pretty good, Kirsten. We know the low FODMAP diet is actually, based on research. And I just kind of cover the FODMAP diet quickly for anyone that doesn't know what it is, but I'm sure there's lots of other presentations in the show about the low FODMAP diet. But essentially it's fermentable oligosaccharides, disaccharides, monosaccharides and polyols, range of different carbohydrates we find in various different foods that we know in IBS can cause triggers. And essentially what we do is we reduce them down for a period of 4 to 6 weeks, and then after that reintroduce them back one at a time in a structured approach to find out which one's causing, or multiple ones causing, the problem, and how much we can have before they become the issue. Okay, so research, we know 50 to 80% of people improve in symptoms, which looks pretty good. So what is the problem then? And I use this all the time, this diet, in my practice. So the diet is not actually a diet, but it's a diagnostic tool. So people forget this. And, I only just did a survey there on my Instagram a day before I've recorded this. And some people have been on this diet for 3 years, 7 years, 4 months. And actually it's not a diet. And I hate the way that, I don't know why we've called it a diet, but it's actually a diagnostic tool. And as I said, you do it for 4 weeks and then you reintroduce, and the reintroduction is how you diagnose your symptoms. This is not a diet that you're just on forever. So even over 4 weeks, we know, and again from research, and this is not just me saying this, that the low FODMAP diet reduces your levels of good gut bacteria. So even just 4 weeks, we know that the people at the end of those studies, after 4 weeks, their levels of good gut bacteria are lower than what they were to start with. Now, this isn't ideal considering we know that people who have IBS do have an altered microbiota compared to somebody who doesn't have IBS. The ins and outs of what that means at the minute, we're not too sure, but it's obviously not ideal. So we need to be thinking about this. So 4 weeks, and then imagine someone being on 7 years or 3 months, or we need to get those FODMAPs back in. May worsen constipation. So as far as I'm aware at this stage, we don't have any studies on this, but if you think about what FODMAPs do, and I would go and look at one of the other presentations if you're not too familiar with this at the minute, but essentially they react in your large bowel, which is the bit right at the end of the gut, and they give off a lot of gas, and they also draw in water. Now, what we forget is this actual reaction happens in everybody with, with IBS, with the bowel, everybody, even people who don't have IBS. But in people who have IBS, they are more sensitive, so they get symptoms. But say you've already constipated, and then suddenly you take out a little bit of gas, and then also you take out a little bit of fluid from the large bowel, and you're already constipated, this can actually make things worse. So again, if you're just telling people, oh, we just need to do a low FODMAP diet, here's a diet sheet, off you go, and you're not really balancing up the other elements, it can actually make things a lot worse. So it reduces variety, and we know variety is key for microbiota health. So yes, if you're eating the same 3 vegetables every day, this is not good for your microbiota. We need a variety. So with the FODMAP diet, and this is the same, the low FODMAP diet, and this is the same with any dietary restriction, it is harder to get a variety in your diet. So that doesn't mean that you can't do it, but it just makes it harder. And probably going back to, really this is why you should be doing it with a dietitian, because this diet, originally you think, oh, it's just a low FODMAP diet, here's a diet sheet, I'll follow it. But actually, a little bit more complicated than that. We want to get you results on it and use it properly, but not make things worse. So should you use this diet? Yes, but as a diagnostic tool in a very limited time period and done correctly. So pinpoint your triggers. And do not forget to reintroduce more than once. So that is a really great point. I'd actually forgotten there until I've seen that point to talk to you about. When I talk to my clients about the FODMAP diet, your IBS may change over time. And some of the other elements we're going to cover today, which is really important for gut sensitivity, actually your gut might be less sensitive at times. So if you can imagine, and if you look at the little box where I'm speaking now, because I love using my hands when I'm talking, if you can imagine IBS is on 2 lines in terms of getting control. The top line, you're just trying to figure out what your dietary triggers are. So this diagnostic low FODMAP tool, let's now call it, is great for that. But actually underneath, you need to kind of work on your gut sensitivity. And the low FODMAP diet is not going to change your gut sensitivity. It's just going to pinpoint what the triggers are, which is very useful. But in terms of long-term symptom control, you might find that your diet, your gut is very sensitive, and we need to improve that. And if you're improving that, which we'll come to in the next couple of points, then actually what you'll find is that you can manage maybe 2 slices of bread, when at a time you can only manage 1 slice of bread. So do, 3 months after you finish the whole process, try certain foods again. 6 months after, try certain foods again. Okay? So number 2 is the probiotics. That should be number 2, probiotics. There we go. So other people will tell you to take a probiotic to improve your gut bacteria levels, okay? And you'd be thinking again, yes, this has been around for a while. We know that probiotics are good for gut health. What are you going on about now? So we know from research that people who have IBS have an altered gut microbiome. Again, no secret, this has been out for a while. And we know from research that certain strain-specific probiotics may help with IBS symptoms. So what is the problem? And just a note there with the strain specificity, if I can even say that word, if you just take a random probiotic, it's really unlikely to work. It has to be very specific. So what we're finding is you might have one probiotic and it's got loads of research behind it. You think, great, fantastic marketing, all the rest, it looks legit. But actually it's only got research to work in maybe a different condition. So it maybe doesn't work in IBS. Even within IBS, there's certain probiotic brands or specific strains that have been shown to work with IBS-C and not IBS-D, or vice versa. So what's the problem? Firstly, probiotics may improve symptoms, but they're unlikely to fully resolve them. So I have never, and obviously I've I'm only one dietitian, and I've only seen so many people in just over 10 years. So there may be somebody out there, but I have never seen somebody fully resolve their symptoms with just taking a probiotic. And I think sometimes we can think, oh, again, expensive supplement, this is going to really work. And unfortunately, we don't get the outcome that we need. So it's probably going back to the fact, if you remember the 4 pillars I talked about in my take control approach, microbiota is only one of the aspects within IBS. IBS is complicated. So if you could it's like doing, just a low FODMAP diet. Yes, it will help and pinpoint the symptoms, but it's not going to improve the other elements of IBS. So probiotics only work whilst you take them. So yeah, I don't know if many people know this, but a lot of the time brands, you might read on the packet, take for 4 weeks, take for 6 weeks. And that's normally because their research only backs up that you have to take it for that long to even see any kind of symptom improvement. So again, if you're looking at something and you think, oh, I really can't afford this, and you're going to have to take it for, you think, but I can afford it for just 4 weeks. As soon as you stop taking it, it's going to stop having its impact. It doesn't actually start growing in your gut spontaneously, unfortunately. What we're seeing from the research is as soon as you finish taking the probiotic, it's no longer in your system, so it doesn't colonize your gut as such. Okay, and you may not need probiotics longer term, and we'll go on to the next slide, and again I'll show you what I mean. So probiotics, again, it's just one piece of the puzzle, and there's other ways to impact your gut microbiota. So 3, the 2 key elements. So 2 key elements, and hopefully they won't come too much of a surprise to you. So what are they? So firstly, it is sleep and mental health. They're both vital for good gut health. You cannot expect your gut health to be like absolutely amazing if you have 3 hours sleep one night, 10 hours sleep the next night, the next day you're napping during the day. Your circadian rhythm, your sleeping patterns are all over the place. We know that sleep is directly related to gut health and microbiome, and also mental health as well. Okay, so poor mental health and sleep will impact your gut microbiota and gut sensitivity. So no matter what food you pinpoint, you are likely to still have a sensitive gut if this continues, or be on a very restricted diet. So yeah, and again, restrictive diet, you don't want to just be thinking, oh, I'm great now, and maybe if you're watching this and thinking, oh, I've got great relief on the low FODMAP diet, and you might have even reintroduced, which is great, but you want to improve your gut health to continue, because if you're maybe having to be eating a diet that's quite restrictive and you can only manage tiny amounts of FODMAPs, long term, that might not be very good for your gut. So we really want to impact your gut from other directions and look at your mental health and your sleeping patterns. So if you address these elements, we see that people can manage more of their trigger foods and scenarios over time. And just going back again to that take control approach that I teach, that's why I say to people, 3 months from now, when I don't even know you anymore, you're not my client, 6 months from now, you might manage more FODMAPs. So try it again, because you're working on your sleep, you're working on your stress, and also the movement is the other one, the exercise, which I'm not going to cover too much today, but it's consistency of these 3 that are really going to make the impact. Sleep consistency, quantity, and amount all matter. Many of my clients will say, oh, you know what, I get 8 hours sleep a night, and in my head it's like alarm bells ringing already, because nobody just gets dead on 8 hours sleep a night. I think that there's definitely no way as good as that. It's about the actual quality as well. So, you need to be going to bed at the same time every night, because otherwise your body just can't get into that good rhythm. So you may well be asleep 8 hours, but the actual REM and non-REM cycles may not be very well balanced. So you're not really in true restorative sleep. And then it's a consistency, again, we might be very good during the week, Monday to Friday, going to bed on time, and then weekend comes, we might be out later, or even just watching Netflix, which is, probably not the best habit to get into, and then you're trying to sleep in till later in the morning. That's not good quality for your sleep, for your gut health, okay? And mental health, stress management, so stress, depression, anxiety, they're all linked to IBS. We know that people who have mental health conditions have different changes in gut microbiota, so there's obviously a connection there. We call it the gut-brain axis. So We know that the gut can actually impact the brain and vice versa. Probably the most known one is more the fight or flight response. So if you've ever been in a situation which has caused a lot of stress or anxiety, you might find that suddenly you need to run to the toilet. And that's no accident. That's your body going into its primal kind of activity. So normally what happens is, I say, well, if you imagine back in the caveman times, you know, if something was chasing you or you had to fight something, then your body would be pumping full of adrenaline, other hormonal and nervous system changes, basically allowing you to run away from the danger in the fight or flight response. But unfortunately, you know, 2021 this is now, we're looking at what other things can actually trigger our stress level. So it could be, you know, looking at your boss has said something, your workload, financial issues. We're in the middle still of this pandemic that's caused a lot of stress for people. And so when you're releasing all these adrenaline, cortisol, and having nervous system changes, then that's going to impact your gut, even though you might just be sitting at a keyboard, or you might be, you know, traveling, that kind of thing. And unfortunately, we know that symptoms themselves and having anxiety around that can then worsen it. So it's this big cycle, okay? And what I'd say to you is, again, you know, we could do probably a 3-hour lecture just on mental health and its impact on gut health and vice versa. But to keep it simple for now, because this is quite a broad topic already, what I'd say to anyone is try and recognize it first of all as a problem. Often we're very bad at even recognizing we've got any kind of stress. I'll speak to clients sometimes, I'll ask them about their workload, and they're like, no, you know, it's this pretty normal stress. And I'll say to them, you know, if you can't recognize that, perhaps ask a loved one, a friend, a partner, a work colleague, can you just track my stress, how you perceive it to be over the next week? And it's just a bit of an eye-opener. You know, things like, is your heart racing? If you've got one of those fitness watches, you know, look at your heart rate, does it go up and down at times? Looking at, you know, if you can track your symptoms. Is there times where, like, I had a client a few months ago who her symptoms were great over the weekend, even though she was eating foods that should typically trigger her symptoms. Monday morning, she would literally be on the toilet for about half an hour before she could even get out of her house to go to work. And then I say, well, is there something about work that's stressing you? Said, no. But obviously there was some element there that had actually been triggering her symptoms. So we need to recognize it, and then we need to get a management plan which is consistent. Now, in my Take Control methodology as a dietitian, I encourage things like meditation are very good. So, you know, Headspace, Calm, those are both apps that you can download now. And they take you through a very simple step-by-step 10-minute tutorial on meditation. I always joke and say people who don't like meditation or they can't do it, you people like me, this is what I'm like as well, we are the people that need it the most, because our head is just swimming round and round. And meditation is very like when you go to the gym the first time, you pick up that weight, you don't really know what you're doing, it's kind of awkward, painful, you're not sure how it's going to help you, and you feel a bit silly. That's because you've never done that movement before. And it's the same when you do meditation. So you need to do it consistently. It's only 10 minutes a day. And that has been, you know, mindfulness has been shown to really help in IBS. So 10 minutes a day, and just jot it in like it's you know, an appointment that you have to do. Ideally not before bed, because we don't want it just to help you go to sleep. We want it to de-stress consistently. So that's one. Other things can be like journaling, using like a notebook to have a brain dump after work, you know, just to get thoughts and ideas. But there's multiple other things. And I would say to anyone, the minimum anybody should be doing is a meditation for 10 minutes a day. However, if you are finding that actually when you look at things like anxiety or, you know, the depression, if you have these symptoms, ideally you really need to be seeing your doctor, because the management of these conditions can be much more complicated than me saying, you know, 10 minutes a day meditation. You may need medication, you may need therapy, and there's different types of that. And, you know, don't please, you know, if your doctor is saying, you know, advising you to take medication, again, I'm not going to advise whether you should or not, but I would just say with IBS, be open to everything, because at the minute I'm seeing there's a big space online, especially to say, you know, do everything naturally. And actually, even though I am a dietitian, and of course I advocate, you know, lifestyle and nutrition, medication has a place when it's used correctly. So just get all the information from your doctor that you need to, and then you can make an informed decision for what's right with you. But either way, mental health needs to be addressed for anybody who's got digestive problems, in the way that, you know, works for you, and you can do it consistently. So if you have a flare-up in the future, just look back as well. Often I see this even in the Take Control program of the clients that I've got. They will say they'll be into the FODMAP diet section. They'll be thinking, great, you know, I'm feeling so much better now. And then suddenly they have this big flare-up and they don't know why. And they get quite disheartened, you know, because they think, oh, everything is going great. And actually it's because of stress, or, you know, they become complacent on their meditation or their other therapy. So if you have a flare-up, you should be tracking your symptoms anyway. Have a look back and see what's going on. If it's a food that you've eaten by accident, it's quite quick to pinpoint if you've done the FODMAP process. It should only last for a couple of days, maximum to get it out of your system. But if it's stress and your flare-up is lasting for a long time, then this might be it, because it's just continuing to go. So look back and then make a plan to go forward. So take home points for today. Number 1, you do not need to be on a restricted diet to get long-term symptom relief. And if anything, this will probably make things much worse. Number 2, microbiota plays a role in IBS, and probiotics may help improve the symptoms as part of a wider management plan, but they're not going to be the be end all. And number 3, IBS can change over time, so for the good or for the worse, and it's just being aware of this and making sure, you know, as I said, you're thinking about IBS on those 2 levels. On the top level, you know what your trigger points are, but on the bottom level, you're continually working to improve your gut health, even if you're not seeing it, you know, the mental health side, sleeping, and then also movement. Good. So free download, how to get that, it's actually going to be posted on this page, so somewhere below in the comments, I believe, but if not, do get in touch with me and I can send it to you as well. It's not a problem. And here are the references. And guys, honestly, any kind of questions you've got, please reach out. My Instagram handle is just there at the bottom, at the .IBS Dietitian. And I really hope you've enjoyed today's presentation. And hopefully, if you've got any questions, you'll reach out and I will speak to you all soon. Thank you.